Good evening, everyone. Very happy to host you here today for Grant Thornton Digital session on automation of controls. Welcome one and all, and thank you for your time and attention. Just a quick, admin announcement. We will be muting the webinar for the participants. Questions at any time. We have people monitoring the chat for Q&A. So do raise your questions there, and we look forward to your active participation across this 1 hour. So again, as by way of introduction, I'm Kalpana. I head Grant Thornton Digital, and very happy to be here amidst colleagues who want to learn and also share. I think this whole topic of automation of controls is extremely relevant in this fast-moving, digitally paced world. Why did we choose this and why now? Because we feel that it's very important from our perspective to see what makes sense to the community. And while we find, maybe pockets of automation, we think that we can actually do a lot in this space and ensure that we effectively use, control specialist time by using technology. So without much ado, maybe we can move to the presentation. Right. So very quickly, maybe I'll walk you through the agenda for a quick minute. Akanksha, if you can go to the next slide, please. Right. So I think we'll first start with why, we think that control automation is necessary. And, this more start the question with why and then move on to the what and the how. And we also have some exciting demos planned for you, with some of our engines and platforms where you can see, really machine learning and AI in action. So let's move to the next slide, please. So we did ask a survey out of the participants, and we thought that we should first start with sharing that with you. And if you look at, what is the journey of the automation, in controls, and have you really started it, or how much work has to be done? I think 75% of us are saying that, look, we need more work to be done. And if you look at what is the percentage of potential automation that you've actually harnessed, I think only about, maybe 25% of the people are saying more than 75, which basically means that both are essentially two sides of a coin, because we haven't actually completed more than 50. I think a lot of them are below that threshold. Next, please. So if you go to the survey results again on, in terms of what are the focused areas of transformation, I think compliance and risk assurance and control is a big topic, and you must be familiar that, the whole, engine is essentially fueled by analytics, and therefore, those are probably some of the areas that you see are securing maximum attention, apart from, of course, process excellence and typical reporting in terms of finance. What we propose, at least from a perspective of controls and risk, is to look at it like just very similar to a supply chain controls tower. Can we establish a controls tower within the organization and then see how we can actually enable digital such that, investments are actually focused and that the benefits would accrue from a specific point rather than chase everyone, but more about that later. So when we asked everyone, what's your biggest challenge in deploying technology, I think nearly 40% of us said that, look, I don't think technology is able to deal or navigate the complexities that a control owner or a finance professional is facing. And therefore, that's when we thought that it's important that we run this session, because we can show you how there are some technologies, and both the presenters today, both of us are qualified chartereds, and we think that, that if we can actually use technology, anyone can. So that with that, I'll move to the next. Well, we thought we saw a lot of numbers, so then we thought we'll share this meme. I'll let you read it. Can we go to the next, please? So we thought we'll start painting a picture of what do I want to do the next year, right? If I'm a controls professional or if I'm actually an assurance professional in an organization, maybe I'm a CFO actually where I want to depend on other people reporting into me that these things are fine. How do I want to run my everyday life? So we said that why not start with maybe something like a broad risk assessment, which is very similar, but essentially cut out all the field work where we essentially use analytics and certain other tools and technologies that are available and establish something like a controls tower where all the anomalies are getting reported, whether anomalies or risks or the mismanagement of risks or control lapses, etc. And then essentially you have a discussion or a human being intervening for discussing with maybe the line of defense 1 and 2, and how can we go more towards this kind of a life rather than maybe going and doing a lot of field work, maybe spending a lot more of time in the field work rather than in maybe interacting with the business or understanding from a point of view why the control lapse is happening and fixing it at source rather than maybe looking at a lot of manual intervention from a point of view of both line of defense 1, the control towers, or any of these people involved in the chain. So our plan was to do more with less, and that's why we've been working for the last 2 years on how we can actually improve the controls automation, and this is what we came up with. Can you go to the next slide, please? So if we look at control monitoring in action, we just thought we'll map out a very simple example of P2P. I know many of us have ERP, and therefore maybe potentially quite a bit of the automation of P2P has already happened. And therefore, how will controls work in such an environment which is digitally enabled, and which portions would a human being actually intervene? I think the policy review has to be done by us. Not sure if even if, for example, we set up machine learning, the benchmarking and understanding the nuances specific to a particular maybe industry may be poor, and therefore, that we recommend a human being does. Apart from that, we do think that in the end, the report closure and possibly looking at the log of the observations is where the human being will come into play. And in the interim, if you look at whether, that there is three-way match, or there is, like maybe some of the duplicate vendors or master data or things like tax compliance, everything can be automated according to us. And we essentially run either algorithms or routines where on a daily basis, either before or immediately after the control is getting executed, you will come to realize that there is a pattern which you can adopt, and you do more towards preventative remedial action rather than post the event. Can we please go to the next slide? So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mona. Mona heads risk automation and digital, and comes with an experience of nearly about 20 years, both as an internal audit head as well as a person leading consulting services, and now, again, imagined and relearned the entire art of technology and how can that be used by both a finance professional and an internal auditor. Over to you, Mona. Thank you. Mona, are you there?
Thank you. Yes. Yes, am I audible? Yeah. So thank you, Kalpana, and thank you, everyone. I'm excited to be talking to you about journey of controls transformation. And the objective is to share what we have learned through the journey we have taken along with our clients to help them achieve the desired outcome. Well, to understand why we should consider automation, we would like to state that despite significant efforts and investments made by a lot of organizations across industries and sectors since Enron days, and the efforts that companies have made in improving their risk management and internal control capability, we still see a lot of examples of control failures right across the board. In recent years, there have been a significant number of high-profile cases of fraud, misconduct, mistakes, misrepresentation, and financial reporting compliance breaches, and even organizational culture issues, all of which can be attributed to essentially control failures. In response to these issues, many organizations are undergoing transformation to remain competitive, viable, and relevant to the customers and stakeholders. They have embarked on a journey to build robust control frameworks that are effective, efficient, and focused on objectives that the organizations wish to achieve. The objectives for change we have seen vary from organization to organization and can include such things as the need to address control failures or issues in the financial reporting, or maybe increased focus on assurance and compliance, or need to improve transparency for boards and committees in relation to internal controls driven by business or technology. We have noted that the case for change is clear for a lot of organizations, and many of our clients have commenced their controls transformation journey. The maturity we see, still varies significantly across industry sectors, types of organizations, and their business realities. Also, with the increased pace of change and the evolving demands and expectations of customers, there is a compelling case to review the way in which controls have been implemented throughout the organization and to explore ways to accelerate automation. Move to the right. Yes. So again, there is a meme here. Well, though we have been talking about controls automation for 10 plus years now, it is still a complex topic many organizations struggle to deal with. Our focus is to make the journey simpler for you to take. Right. So on this slide is a typical framework followed by organizations for improving the maturity of their control environment. The transformation must be customized to see the organization's needs, culture, ways of working, and most importantly, it must have buy-in from leadership and appropriate change management support. In order to build a robust and effective framework, there are several important questions that need to be considered. And by answering these, we find that the organizations are able to assess where they currently are and importantly design where they want to be. We have noted that what works best is that we follow 4-frame and 7-layer approach for automation. 4 frames being rationalize, automatability assessment, digitize, and automate. These key frames make sure that you have the right controls to unlock the automation potential within these, and that you automate control performance and testing to get the right level of assurance that you need. So let's talk a little in detail about the frames of automation. The first being controls rationalization. Well, organizations frequently have overlapping controls, and we've seen that a lot without realizing it due to decentralization of controls documentation. Control rationalization is an effort to reevaluate the existing control environment to remove duplicates, inefficient, unnecessary, or irrelevant controls from the testing population, and to reassess the remaining controls for design efficiency to mitigate the respective risks. This can be done through identification of the frameworks your organization is required to comply with, for example, SOX, IFC, etc., and determine the framework which is the most comprehensive or most critical to your organization. So next frame is opportunity assessment or automation assessment. In defining a transformation vision, an early assessment of what is possible and definition of where on the maturity scale would the organization like to strive towards based on this vision is important. This helps to identify the controls that can be and should be automated, right? Versus those that remain semi-automated and manual. And this is very, very important. And for controls that rely on system-generated reports, it's imperative that these requirements are linked to the underlying data model. So digitization, third one, which is the process of converting information into a digital format. It's an important point to consider. And it is good to start to assess current opportunities within existing systems, processes, and data by possibly leveraging underutilized system capabilities, organizing data into usable format, or by streamlining some process design. Like unless we've come to this layer, it's very difficult to progress on the automation journey, and thus this is very important. Now, in terms of automation, we have seen a strong adoption of robotic process automation and similar technologies. However, controls driven by AI are still in the relative infancy in India compared to US and the Europe for most organizations. I believe that AI is still very much as a black box, and until robust governance and assessment frameworks for the algorithms have been adopted, the actual use of AI controls may still take some time. After looking at the frames, now let's discuss the design layers for automation. Based on our experience in assisting clients with their transformation journey, we have defined 7 components or design layers that must be considered to deliver a successful transformation. I'll cover them at high level here. At the onset, it is important to know who the control operators are and who and how these controls are tested and monitored. The first layer, which is the functional layer, is where you define your future state end-to-end processes, taking a role-based process flow view. And once you have defined this, the people layer should outline the role and required skill sets for each role and job definitions to ensure the right skill set is hired to support the journey, right? And now this may involve a change in the service delivery model. And you will need to define what will get done and where. This is again very, very important, with options including shared service centers, centers of excellence, and even outsourced operating models. The technology layer after this is platform specific and the key driver for functional capability uplift. This should include the future state architecture, test groups, and is closely aligned with the insights and the data layer, which should define information and reporting requirements and a KPI framework to optimize your decision making. So additionally, managements must ensure the change is managed effectively. Again, a very important component in automation projects. According to a recent survey, one of the biggest barriers for organizations considering automation technology is centered around alignment, with 19% saying that change management is their top priority, and concern because they worry about job loss. Finally, the governance layer, which defines how all of this will be overseen and includes policies, risks, and controls for each process, plus segregation of duties and sensitive access rules. We have seen a number of transformation projects heavily focusing on technology component without due consideration of all the other layers of the operating model, which may result in significant risk exposure post go live. And this is something that we would all like to avoid. Another very important consideration, which we have not covered here, because it is a large topic and we may cover in a subsequent seminar, is budgeting and cost benefit analysis, which must be done at the beginning of these projects to ensure the automation initiatives provide measurable benefits overall for the organization. Yeah, next slide. Right. So this slide defines how the solution design should look like. At the bottom, we have the information and data layer. And next in line is the technology stack enabling automation via automation scripts. We then have the reporting layer and the exception management happening through COE, or can be directly managed by stakeholder management, that is LOD 1 or 2, taking the overall responsibility for assurance management. right? So this is how the design of a solution design should ideally look like. But it again varies from organization to organization and based on the maturity that the organization is at currently. Next slide. Right. So it's been a lot of serious content discussion. So let's take a poll as a refresh. We request all of you to scan and then answer the questions.
I think the link is there in the chat window as well, in case you're not able to access the QR. Thank you.
Maybe I'll read out the question. Opportunity assessment is an essential pre-step towards controls transformation. Right. So we have 100% saying yes. And that's correct. Do you think there is a need to change organization structure? Again, yes. 100% saying yes. Okay, we have the results still populating. Right, so we have 73% saying yes. Oh, it's still going on, all right. Right, so there is a significant majority feeling that it is important to form control towers. Right, and third question being, is change management an essential part of controls transformation journey? Right, 91% saying yes, that's correct. Right. Is it important to know? Yeah, 94. Right. So 95% saying yes, and which is correct. So I hope this was a good refresh for everybody, and let's move back to the slides.
I think, Mona, it'll be interesting to also understand maybe later on in Q&A some of the views about, okay, if there's not much of change management that's required, how are people handling it? It'd be lovely to hear from some of them later. And
Right.
again, if there is no control tower, what potential or org structure can you port this whole mechanism into, of course, maybe people call control towers centers of excellence for control, different names by different kind of organizations, but again, would encourage the participants to share perhaps in the closing minutes of this webinar, because we do have a share and ask questions time. Feel free to also type into your chat if you think you want to maybe provide your views so that we can interact with you in a much more effective way. Go ahead, Mona.
Right. Yeah. So next very important consideration, the automation journey, is to select the right technology that enables automation. And so let's understand some of the automation enabling technologies here. Maybe Akanksha, you can just, yeah, right. No, go back, right. Thanks. So there are platforms such as, all right, so there are platforms that combine several of these capabilities under one umbrella. And when selecting the technology, it is important to list down the capabilities that we require and select platforms that may offer combined capabilities to enable effective cost and effort management. Also, before engaging with technologies, it is pertinent to ensure we are able to leverage capabilities offered by existing ERPs, right? That's very, very important within the organization, such as S/4HANA, because we see that, those platforms significantly can help us with the automation. Now, in terms of enabling technologies, it may be important to invest in process mapping tools to visualize or model processes and workflows. There are many process mapping tools available, and we encourage you to explore whether your organization has subscribed to an existing tool, because many times these tools are easily available that you can leverage. When assessing the suitability of a process mapping, the key consideration is whether the tool enables each control to be linked to the specific process step, associated risk, and defined control attributes. When we have a reviewed process controls as a part of transformation program, one of the gaps that we often see is what we call the design of orphan controls. Now, there are controls that do not link to the specific process and either lack a control owner or adequate detail in the description to articulate what the actual control is. And quite often, it is these controls that do not get embedded within processes post go live, potentially resulting in risk not being addressed. Then we have workflow enabling technologies available for assisting with our automation journey. Implementing workflow technologies help in automating the entire life cycle of assurance and compliance management, and help in reduction of run cost by greater than 60% based on our experience. We have continuous monitoring solutions. So we have seen that a clear trend these days is developing where there is shift towards location independent controls monitoring solutions. Controls have been restructured and standardized to achieve a common control framework, which in turn ensures compliance with various applicable regulations such as SOX, GDPR, NIST, IFC, etc. The ask of the hour is to have a continuous controls monitoring solution that recognize the inherent complexities and volumes associated with today's global processes. Our CCM solutions monitor processes and help customers to transition from traditional sample-based testing models to economical monitoring of full populations. And I think these could really assist us with the automation journey, and in fact are the necessary next step as a part of our automation or enabling automation within the organizations. We also have GRC solutions. Lot of solutions available. GRC platforms for managing governance, risk management, and compliance refer to an integrated suite of software capabilities for implementing and managing an enterprise GRC program. And we're all aware of these, so I will not get into much detail here. Other technologies include RPA, consisting of software and app-based tools like rules engines, workflow, and screen scraping. RPA tools automate manual and routine activities that follow clear-cut rules, such as comparing records and processing transactions. Also, we have cognitive automation. These lie at the far end of the spectrum, targeting activities that require higher level skill judgment and critical thinking. Cognitive automation systems combine advanced technologies such as natural language processing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analytics to mimic human activities such as inferring, reading, emotional cues, communicating, etc. Then, in addition, there are other technologies like process mining tools. Then we have OCR capabilities, etc., that may be considered basis the requirement of different organizations. We just brought out the entire spectrum of capabilities here, but the selection would happen basis the actual requirement of the organization. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that there are tools which provide combined capabilities under one umbrella. And while selecting technology, we may need to consider that. Next slide. Next slide. Have we moved to next slide? Seems to be some glitch. Are we sharing?
No, Mona, I think there is some problem perhaps on the other side. Sorry about this. We always plan to not have such glitches, and somehow there seems to be inadequate control in our process, I suppose. But yeah, I think we should be back up just now.
Yeah. Thanks. Right. So while we have spoken about process and technology in earlier slides, it is of high pertinence that for any transformation program to run successfully, all three elements of people, process, and technology must work in tandem. Intelligent automation requires changes to capabilities and skill sets. For example, experienced personnel will be needed to develop, troubleshoot, support, and improve the new technologies. In business functions where intelligent automation is implemented, the existing workflows will need to shift skills from transactional processing to more critical thinking, problem solving, right? As the routine tasks get automated, and issue resolution and research skills. So there's definitely a requirement for change in the skills that be needed for the existing workflows as well. The current employees will need to be trained to ensure they're capable of handling newer technologies and aligned with a new model of working. Organizations should have a plan to redeploy or acquire talent to meet these needs, as well as implement change management and communication plans to address transitions within the workforce. Very important. And next slide. Right. So we have about 15 minutes. So I think we would cover some of the use cases to inline. Yeah, and then we would also get on the platform and show you a demo. Right, Akansha, move to the next. Right. So, so this is a use case on automation of journals monitoring controls that we have implemented for an organization which had 18 plus businesses and presence across multiple geographies. Since this was a large group, they were dealing with significantly high number of journal entries with limited visibility to journal entry culture and processing behaviors across businesses. Next. So we automated the monitoring process by automated ingestion of data. For example, data sets like COA, chart of accounts, GL and TB across different entities were ingested directly and tested, and the test of data done against 25 plus key risk indicators which were developed by us as a part of the program, and provide visualized exception reporting for key stakeholders. So what we essentially did was connect to the systems within the organizations across different entities, pulled the data, like COA, GL, and TB. We brought it into a lab, and then we run the KRI against this data to provide exception reporting. The visibility helped the management in gaining real-time insights and continuous monitoring of all entries being posted across the different group entities. The monitoring helped in significant reduction of fraud through real-time monitoring, because the management was able to monitor these journal entries on real-time basis. It also helped provide a lot of insights on the journals to the management, thereby helping them bring down the significant number of entries, because they were large number of entries, and once the insight came in, then they could rationalize and bring down the number of entries that were posted within the environment. So go to the next, right? Right. Right. So some of the advantages being that there was, from a fraud-based testing available for the journal entries, real-time and continuous monitoring, ML for continuous learning, because the system, the platform that we have is able to learn basis how the management views the different journal entries, and then so there was this continuous training that happened to the program to ensure that only the right positives are shown as exceptions. And also they were executive dashboards and insights that we developed for the management. Right. So we will now jump onto the demo. We'll go into the platform and just look at the demo and then come to that. We'll look at the journals first. Akansha. Right. So right now we're presenting the visualized dashboard of the journals module that we have and that we implemented. Of course, this is a demo environment, and what we are showcasing to you is using demo data only and not the real data. So if you see, this is the welcome dashboards. This projects all the different KRI that we run across the journals within an organization. The first layer being all the validation tests that we perform on the data being ingested. The second layer being the KRI testing. And the third layer being combined KRI testing. And of course, this module really talks about the data that got ingested or that gets ingested for journals testing, right? And also there is filter available on the top where we could look at or filter data by the company code, then by period. Similarly, we can filter data by the usernames of the people who are passing the entries. These are linked to different account combinations, could be filtered via balance sheet or income statements, also by account, by the source, entry date, etc. Also provide the lower layer actually provides information on the total number of journal entries and also the value of the journal entries at the end if we scroll down, right? So there's this debit and credit values that are available just to ensure that we are looking at the right data set. If we move to the next, that is the trial balance and GL reconciliation, right? So this tab actually provides, it performs testing of trial balance versus GL to ensure that we are looking at the right data set. There ideally should not be any difference and the value should be 0. Of course, this is demo data just to showcase that there are, if there are any differences, then this will be pointed out or showcased here, and then we would know that the data needs to be corrected before we start to visualize it and take inputs from it. We also go to the journal risk indicator. Yeah, the number for this, yeah. In this tab, we are able to visualize the manual versus system journals, right? Because manual journals pose significant risk within the organization. We are able to view the percentage and between manual, and of course the drill down, if you see in the right hand side, the drill down window, the breakdown of these manual journals can happen to the last leg, till the leg of the final journal entry. We can perform drill down. Also, we will be able to look at the percentage of manual versus the automated, giving us a view of how risky is our journals culture within the organization. If you move to the next, manual journal trends. Right. So this provides the number versus the value of the journals across different periods, and any significant deviation, like for example in this we are able to see that in period number 2 there is a significantly high value, right? Including the number of journals also have gone up, so there may be there's something that we may want to evaluate. So just a view is available for the management to understand what would be some of the journals that would need further investigation. Moving to the backdated journals. Right, so this view provides all the journals which were backdated within our application, and it provides also a trend around the backdated journal entries. And here we are able to view that they're not consistent, they have moved, and thus there's something that may require investigation. And of course the platform also allows for management to actually pass or fail these tests or the outcome exceptions that we provide. And once the management is able to provide a reason, the next time the platform learns on itself, and then the next time those exceptions would not be showcased as a part of the platform. And this is a visualized view. We also have a backend platform where the compute happens. Also, so there are many additional KRIs. So we have 25 plus KRIs that have been developed here, including fraud risk indicators for the journals. There are also combined KRI that we get a view of. Also, the capability to process data is unlimited, which means the platform is scalable. And when I want to add additional group entity for my review, it can be done without any significant additional cost. Right, so time check, I think we can move to the next use case quickly. I will walk through. Right, so this is a use case where we implemented, this is again a demo version, but we implemented ITGC monitoring, ITGC controls monitoring capability. We have 70 plus routines for ITGC testing. Here we are just showcasing you the user profile management foundation solution. As you can see, this is the work paper tab, and this is we are directly on our platform. We can see that we have about 7 controls that get tested against user access management. Once we click on one of the routines, we are able to see whether the control that was run, whether it has findings, it does not have findings. We are able to populate risks and recommendations for the control test happening here. We are also able to view the last review and the last tested date. Also, one significant thing here that we would want to point out is that the platform integrates with the existing platforms within any client environment and can pull data directly. There is no manual upload that needs to happen. And once this has been set up, the view is quite, works on its own. And then, as and when the backend data refreshes, the view refreshes for the management. Also, in terms of, if we were to view what data we have uploaded, there's this manage evidence tab that is available, where we're able to see what files got uploaded. Similarly, if we want to look at the findings in detail, we can get into the manage findings folder, which is available, where all the we can look at all the exceptions. Of course, this being demo, we're able to see 2 exceptions in terms of duplicate users. Management can accept or reject this finding and provide a reason. Every time a management accept a risk, they would need to provide a reason for doing so. And of course, this reason needs to be re-validated every quarter, so that once something is marked as no, it does not remain as so. We're able to track logs within the platform, also the paper management, as well as data storage capabilities that we're able to offer. Right, so probably we move back to the slide. If you can move back to the slide, Kansa. Right. Right. So move to slide number 17. No, move to slide number 17. I'll quickly cover. Right. So here, very quickly, I would like to cover the methodology for automating controls. So on the left-hand side, you see various data sources that the platform can integrate with and also ingest data from. The formats may vary. It could be Excel, it could be screenshot, it could be PDFs. Similarly, they could be, the data sources could be databases, cloud, could be different ERPs. The platform has capability to actually ingest data and integrate and ingest data on a continuous basis through connectors via API as well. The data goes through then the data pipeline. And once data comes into the lab, that is where the customized procedures are built and the run happens, and the reporting happens via default reporting capability that we have, or we also could integrate with any of the existing platforms, visualized platform that the clients may be using. You can move to the next slide. Right. So we've covered a lot of content. And thus, let's also look at some of the challenges that are faced by organizations, in implementing the automation or embarking on the automation journey. So based on our experience with implementation projects, we can tell you that the best way to navigate challenges in transformation projects are to foresee what can go wrong in the entire life cycle of project management and ensure mitigation strategies are in place to counter these risks. Some of the common challenges and pitfalls on what can lead to project failures that we have seen as per our experience are objectives and outcomes of the program.
Right.
Right.
So Mona, I'm conscious that we have about 10 minutes and we also need to handle some of the questions.
Sure.
So maybe without much ado, we basically summarize and essentially what we're saying is, look, the controls journey is slightly more complicated now because the processes are also heavily automated, or you have various amounts of digital intervention. If we can move to the next slide, please. So essentially, to recap, the first step that you need to undertake is to look at opportunity assessment. Then you look at probably, what are the different levels of process, and then do the technology consideration, and then do the proof of concept. So from our perspective, we think that, that, okay, here you may see that maybe, some people tend to swap 2 and 4. So essentially, you could do maybe a proof of concept and then do the detailed assessment so that you then know that whether the business case works or not. Okay, so maybe let's go over to some of the question and answers over here. So I think, Hari, you've asked a question on how to convince the organization that control is important when it becomes an expense. So from our perspective, I think if you look at, any kind of expense or investment, I think from our perspective, we would think that investing in controls is better than calling it an expense. And from our perspective, again, if you look at seeing, okay, what is the value that control brings? I think it's important to understand what happens if you don't have brakes when you have a fast-paced car. So the idea is more preventative and not really looking at what exactly is a one-to-one correlation over there. And again, this needs to be thought through, because for every situation, depending on what is the industry and what is the risk appetite and possibly, the control failure rate, you could have maybe either too many controls in place or too less controls in place. And so it seems to be quite a specific question. So that's the way I would handle it, Hari. So the second one would be on what is the big concern faced by, and this is from Suman. She says, or he says, concern faced is essentially looking at, it's not always practical to have a COE. I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, when we mean COE, we don't mean a physical structure. We mean a digital organization structure where you have data mapping and data pipelines created such that the control teams are able to work. So for example, we are currently servicing a very large investment banker offshore, and what we are trying to do is to establish data pipelines where the models, the analytics will be done by internal auditors, but in an agile manner there are data mapping and pipelines being created so that they find it much simpler to automate the routines or to look at saying what is going wrong in the system from a control parameter perspective. So you could have a very simplistic structure, but it is still important to think through whether you'll have one gang of people working on data and automation and then another gang servicing from there, or you want both as integrated organization. Our experience is segregate the two and have maybe very few people manage both controls and tech, because those kind of people are hard to come by and they're quite expensive from a training perspective and retention perspective. How to check out the controls, whether they effectively work or not, at least in our experience, if you automate the controls, you should have something like a control cockpit which tells you which controls are operating and which are failing. Therefore, it should be a near real time kind of an exercise here. What are the capabilities around senior leadership reporting? I think, we do have, from our perspective, we have a Power BI dashboard. Of course, we have not depicted that over here, but essentially, you could get maybe at a glance, which are the controls that are failing and passing. And so for senior leadership to sleep easy, you could actually just open your dashboard up anytime and you can customize the dashboard based on the leader. For example, if I'm a marketing head and I want to look at different set of risks and controls versus maybe a CFO, I could actually have that done as well. But we didn't cover it very specifically, though we did show a portion of the Power BI dashboard capabilities as well. So I think we have another 5 minutes. I don't know if any of you want to share any thoughts or questions in the Q&A. Okay, I guess not. I think overall our premise for holding this was more from a perspective of saying, look, if in case we are looking at the whole landscape of everything changing, then why should not the control landscape change? Should you actually look at it proactively and make sure that you change that much in advance of just the business completely changing, or should you do it in tandem? I think there is also one more question by Kamini saying essential control for process transition. Maybe I didn't really understand the question. Let me just go back and read it again. Give me a minute. Right. I don't know, Kamini, if you mean what are some of the essential controls for a process transition. And I'm assuming maybe this is like an offshore transition or maybe moving from one place to another, etc. I think the most essential control, and of course, this varies on your background as well, but if you were to generalize and give an answer, I think at least the basic same SLA and the KPIs that were being met earlier should be met without having any control labs. And we would generally give it about 3 months for you to settle down if you're doing a process transition, because that's how much time it takes, for somebody to maybe look at settling down. I think Vikas has another question. Can you automate NIST CSF controls? I'm sorry, I don't understand what is NIST or CSF, but we can certainly revert to you after looking at it. Too many standalone pieces of control implemented and then combining all of that is very challenging. Says Lakshmi, and what is our opinion? Yes, we do think that it's very challenging, and which is why we've actually built a platform that will act as a control cockpit. So whether there are controls coming from GRC or from maybe specific ERP or somewhere else, you need something like a cooking station, where you can actually see that everything is being done okay, almost like a helicopter view, and that's why we have this. And Rajat asks, what should be the best automated internal control tool for financial reporting and planning? Look, I would think your best automated tool should be your ERP first to start off with. And if you look at the controls automation in financial reporting, there are some specific risks that you run, especially around journals, especially around, maybe things like, maybe, let me say, misaligning some of the expenses to make sure that the budget is met, or either on cost or on revenue, and so on and so forth, right? Like, while we don't want to presuppose that everybody has a bad intent or a malefic intent, I think the job of somebody looking at what can go wrong, you may need to look at the entire spectrum of things and understand what all can go wrong. Because generally, these controls need to operate a lot more during month end versus, so the timing of this becomes very important, because the way the risk appears, the control should also appear at the same time. And therefore, if you look at maybe, financial reporting or planning, the best way that probably you can actually make sure that you choose the tool, and here it could be even a Python script running, to make sure that whether what did I commit versus what am I doing, and am I actually having maybe too many, let's say manual controls and so on. And so from my perspective, I think that's what I would say. I would say that, that when you're looking at year-end controls or reporting or planning controls, please time it with the way in which the risk appears, right? So that'll be the best. I think ESG reporting is a great point. In fact, we have a module in the same platform which we are developing, Kartikeya, and we'll be very happy to have a chat with you. I think the ESG one, because there are various data pipelines being created both from internal as well as external, it's very important to see how that whole thing with integrated reporting will operate. We'll be very happy to have a chat with you. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we have the time just now. So there's another question by Rajat saying, my organization is using Tally, but the number of transactions is large scale of around 80K entries. I'm assuming, Rajat, you're from an e-commerce. My heart goes out to you. We've seen many of such e-commerce companies, or, companies where they've grown very large and have Tally controls. You may want to consider using Microsoft Azure or AWS in terms of SQL servers. They operate very well from a control perspective, where you can dump Tally and actually then evaluate from there. Of course, the biggest problem in Tally is there is no master data control. So that will still be a huge hit, because you may have multiple duplicates and so on and so forth. And maybe you'd want to reduce that by, maybe altering Tally a bit to not allow all kinds of stuff. I think, Vikas, you mentioned that these are cyber-related controls, and yes, so the platform does allow cyber-related controls to be automated as well. But essentially, I'm not a cyber specialist, but we do have other people in our team who are, and we'll be happy to come back to you at a later time. But my straight answer is yes, because we did actually use for, automating some of the controls. I think there's one more question, and I will then close this. Thanks, Kimanshu, for asking, does the tool have capability or ability to extract the data from shared drive and SharePoint? Yes. For a multi-factor authentication, yes. So we would, for example, maybe we will actually send out a request to a human being, which can be, maybe approved on mobile, and then the machine can pick up. We still don't subscribe to making via media or having a, maybe a third party site or different places trying to look at breaking maybe some of the protocol, because that's statutorily not allowed. Where multi-factor authentication is involved, we can actually enable this platform to essentially send an object to your mobile, such that you will then enter what you need to from a two-factor authentication, and then the machine will again pick up after that. So I hope you all had a enlightening day. We'd like to make sure that we bring our communities up to date. We believe our change, to digital should be simple. And from our perspective in digital, we believe that we should be reimagining tomorrow. And today we are very happy to reimagine controls for all of you guys. And thank you very much for your time this evening. Have a great evening, all. Thank you.